Hello, everyone. It's actually Saturday. It's not Friday, but it's Saturday. It's Chat with Mac. It's a Saturday edition of Chat with Mac. We thank you for joining us. For those of you that are new to what we do, we're actually happy to have you also, and thank you for joining us. We hope that you enjoy it. Nadeem, how's it going today, sir?
Oh, doing pretty good. It's going great. I got a few things wrapped up. There was a few projects I had to wrap up, and got that done. One of my friends introduced me to a 3D printer that he's working on. Well, he works on these large CNC machines, and he needs some help with that, with the computer interface. So he said he was going to give me a little 3D printer to try it out with and just get familiar with it. And then we need to fix his old CNC printer. But anyway, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we're going to talk about there's this whole thing that's been, I guess you could say, making waves. The CEO of Snowflake, Frank Slootman, has been, for lack of a better term, feeling a little bit feisty and really had some things to say about Microsoft, Amazon, and Google as far as their infrastructure or their architecture. So I was wondering if you can expound a little bit on that, because it's kind of interesting to see some of what he had to say about that.
So, and I have, my own views on this, like everybody else. Here's the bottom line.
Right.
Snowflake is the pocket knife at a gunfight. So, and the thing is, of course, he's going to say these other providers, their infrastructure is getting outdated, or all this is happening. But I don't think it is, because if we look at both Amazon and Microsoft, they have been updating their infrastructure and actually expanding and bringing in additional services over time. I mean, when Azure first started, there was only one type of VM available, one or two types, and now there's over 10 types. It's like when somebody needs to decide on what VM to use, it's kind of hard to make that decision because there's so many varieties, all the way from entry level for dev test type workloads up to where you have the GPUs virtualized. Now, of course, Snowflake CEO is saying, well, the infrastructure is actually getting old. Actually, it's not. The infrastructure is changing. So we are actually at the third gen of Azure infrastructure. It used to be the legacy, then it became the new, what they call the ARM infrastructure. And now it's the third generation of Azure. The modern infrastructure is what they're calling it. And every so often, the whole infrastructure changes. Now, when I say the infrastructure changes, it's not just it's actually a double-edged sword, right? So this goes to what Slootman and all these guys are saying, is that the technology behind it is getting old. It's not. It's being revamped over time as new things develop. So about I think last 3 to 6 months ago, we used to use a certain version of Windows PowerShell, right? PowerShell commands. So we had access to Azure backend using Windows PowerShell. Well, now that whole language that we use to talk in PowerShell is different. All those old commands will not work anymore in the new Azure, and you can choose whether you want to stay in the old. So whether you want to stay in the classic, in the ARM, or then the latest one, the modern infrastructure. So now you have 3 tiers, and you can pick and choose which tier you want to go with. So if industries have already standardized their scripting to use the classic PowerShell, the old PowerShell commands, they can still keep using that. But the newcomers, so we have customers that are in the old first gen, which we want to keep them in first gen because we've already built a bunch of stuff in. We can't just, rip and replace. So they're going to stay there for the foreseeable future. And so we have that. And then we have the middle tier, some customers in the middle tier, we have that. And now, within the last few months, we've been putting all customers in the latest third generation of the infrastructure. So of course, Snowflake is going to say their infrastructure is getting dated or it's not getting, but that's not the case. Amazon is doing the same thing. That's the thing about cloud infrastructure is that the pace of development is so fast. And actually, some people have a problem with that. They're telling Microsoft, hey, quit changing your stuff. We want to stay in just one interface, just one command set, and just use that forever. But that's not realistic. So Microsoft's saying, hey, we'll support that old command set as long as you need it, but we're moving to this new command set as well. So now you can pick and choose. So now why, so the reason Snowflake is getting some coverage in the news is because they got some good deals, right? They got some good customers, some higher profile customers. So, but let me say this. I think last time I looked, Snowflake's revenue Snowflake's total revenue in a year was, I think, a little less than what Azure's revenue is in one day.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, if you're just sitting on your laurels and you're not doing any innovation, you don't get that way. I mean, you don't see that big of a difference. So I think this is just like marketing hype, really. Now it is a niche that Snowflake fills, and that is being such a small cloud provider, they can bend over backwards to support certain companies that need certain types of support. Azure and Amazon, they're not going to do it. They're going to be like, hey, you use these systems because we've standardized it. Everybody uses that. It's that, our way or the highway, right? Snowflake's going to be like, oh, okay, well, you need this fancy gold-plated bridge. We'll build you this fancy gold-plated bridge just for you because you're special. And they're going to do that because they need all the customers they can get.
Right.
It's not easy competing with the Azures and the AWSs of the world. It's the investments behind that, the architecture, and then just. I mean, for us, it's a huge problem as well, because every time the commandlets change in PowerShell for Azure or even Office 365, our techs have to learn a lot of stuff again. I mean, we're on a continuous, fast-paced learning curve, and by the time we get so efficient with the command set that we can just use the commands off the top of our head, the command set's changed already. I mean, right now, if you did Google on certain, command shell commands for Azure, you will notice that majority of the hits that are coming up are the older style commandlets, not the newer ones. It's changing that fast that Google can't keep up with it. So saying that these infrastructures are getting old, outdated, the technology is getting old, outdated, I think that's just more of a marketing thing than anything else.
All right, so let's shift gears real quickly, because there was something that Slootman said that was kind of taking a shot at the whole hybrid cloud trend. And he kind of stated, according to what we've been reading, that the ability to straddle the worlds of having on-prem and cloud services, he kind of looked at it as a liability rather than something that was a positive or a virtue. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
So we've run into a lot of customers where it is imperative to have both worlds going, at least for the near future, because how can you migrate to so everybody's on-prem, right? In the old world, everybody was on-prem. How do you migrate to the cloud? You can't just one day say, okay, come this Friday, we're going to cancel everything that's on-prem and we're going to be totally in the cloud. It doesn't work like that. The real world doesn't work like that. When you're making these infrastructure changes, it's like you're changing the tires on an 18-wheeler going down the road. You can't stop it, but yet you need to change the tires on it. How do you do that? Well, that's where hybrid comes in. So you keep your workloads on-prem, you take little sections of it to the cloud. Eventually, you get majority of it in the cloud. Now you can decide, okay, now we're going to shut our on-prem down because our developers are familiar with the cloud environment. Our infrastructure guys can support the cloud environment. We can be in the cloud 100%. Now we can shut down our local on-prem stuff. And that's when so the iteration is fully on-prem to hybrid to cloud. That's the way things go. And saying that it's a liability, or you're not considering all potential workloads out there. And I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a customer that has 300 users on-prem, at different premises, and they need to support their local users. They have to have domain controllers on each one of these sites. Let's say if they have 2 sites, they have to have domain controllers on each one of these 2 sites. Well, if they want to move to the cloud, now they need some sort of directories in the cloud as well. So they have to have the on-prem domain controllers. They have to have the domain controller in the cloud. They have to be in a hybrid mode. Unless you were such a small setup that all you have is standalone machines, no domain controllers, or, you don't need any domain controllers, or you don't have a domain, so those are very specialty departments. And if it's whole company, it's a very small company that doesn't have domain controllers and no, central management of IT resources. So you have to be in a hybrid mode to be able to do this. And we see this all the time. I mean, we can't just like one day, it's almost like going from on-prem to the cloud, or going from one cloud to another cloud. It's a planned, phased approach. You can't just do a cutover one day. One day you're on-prem, next day you're on the cloud. It doesn't work like that. So I think that's just more of a marketing thing. That how else are these guys going to be in the news? We won't be talking about them unless they made these crazy comments. And it's almost like the flea on a dog chasing a fire truck. These guys are the flea, and the Azures and the AWSs are the fire truck.
Right.
The flea doesn't even know what a fire truck is. It can't even comprehend what a fire truck is. The flea's world is just that little section on the dog that it knows about. That's it. So I think it's more of a marketing hype. But what he's talking about, it doesn't work like that in the real world. In the real world, we have to have hybrid setups. It's imperative. You can't just snap your fingers and just switch from on-prem to cloud. You have to take a phased approach. If it's only 5 users, I can snap my fingers and make everybody in the cloud. But in the real world, it's usually like 500 users, not 5 users. You can't just snap your fingers and get all these 500 users up in the cloud all at once. It's just not going to happen. And then not to mention the time it's going to take for the data to replicate and all that. I mean, I don't even know why they're making those kind of comments other than to be in the news. Awesome. So yeah, hybrid is it's imperative. Our goal may be to go 100% to the cloud, but that transition period requires some sort of hybrid setup. And if your company, if you're a cloud provider and you don't have the capability for hybrid or on-prem coexistence, of course you're going to say hybrid is no good and it's the end of the world because your technology doesn't support it. So what are you going to say? So I think it's just some marketing stuff, but yeah, that was interesting conversation. Snowflake wasn't even on my radar before until you mentioned it. It's like, wait a minute, what is he talking about? It's like, and there's a reason why they're not on my radar, because if their sales or marketing guys called me and said, oh yeah, we want you to try our platform, by the way, we are strictly against hybrid approach, I'm going to be like, thanks, but yeah, I'm good where I am.
Thanks for no thanks, right?
Yeah. And there's, even there's a lot of limitations even when you go to the Google Cloud, right? Azure and AWS, basically, in my mind, those are the main 2 competitors in the cloud world. Google is a very far third. Hopefully they'll make some changes, but that's a very far third. And the reason why I like in our own workloads are in Azure, and the reason for that is because when we do our even now when we do our performance testing, the same workloads in Azure perform better than they do in AWS, and maybe it's because of the infrastructure that AWS uses a lot of open source technology. The hypervisors and things like that are a little different, but whatever it is, or maybe they're just over provisioned or something. But the same workloads, same cost, the workload performs better in Azure compared to AWS. And Microsoft does not give us any special treatment. I mean, we get the same. So like if I, let's say, sign up an A4 VM, it's going to be the same A4 VM that any customer is going to get out there. So we don't get any special treatment from Microsoft. When we spin up a workload, we get the same workload like anybody else. And when we do our testing, we can actually see hard facts that the same spec machines are performing better in Azure. I'm not against AWS. Actually, when we first started out, building cloud infrastructure, we actually started in Amazon AWS, and very soon we started running into some issues with performance because we were coming from the on-prem world, and similar specs would have performed well on-prem, but it wasn't performing well in the cloud. And that's when we were like, okay, well, this new Azure thing is coming up. Let's compare. Let's see, how well it works. And when we started doing the comparisons, it was a big difference. And that's why we kind of now all of our tool set, everything is pretty much standardized on Azure. That's when we decided to build our intellectual property and focus more on Azure side of things, just because for the same price you get better performance. So that's what we'll recommend. But if you work on one cloud infrastructure, you can pretty much work on any cloud infrastructure. They're very similar. Some of our scripts will not work on, they're not interchangeable, but you can rescript it. Like if, you with minor tweaks, you can run the scripts on either platform. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know where this, I think Snowflake's only saying these things just to be in the news, and that's about it.
That's it. Awesome.
So I think we'll call it at that. A good discussion. I don't want to talk about any other topics. One of the things that I'm thinking is we might want to stick to just one topic in these chats, and viewers out there, if you think that's good, let us know, or if it's not good, let us know that too. But what I've gotten so far is that if we can just do one topic, or maybe if we talk about two topics, split it into two different videos, so people can just hear about that one topic. So today it was third-party cloud providers versus the two big cloud providers, and everybody should know who the two big cloud providers are. Right. And there's no third. There's only two.
Awesome.
So everybody have a great day, and be safe out there. Mac, hopefully everything is good on your side, and you have a great weekend.
Let's hope so.